Hello, Ignite. My name is Yina, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I lead product for the Azure AI Foundry team, and joining me shortly will be Steve and Charlie. Today, we're going to talk about the Azure OpenAI service. We're going to focus the talk in 3 key chapters: innovation, customization, and scale and flexibility. But before we go there, I want to start with talking about the impact and share how OpenAI is helping transform already many applications across our customers. You've probably seen this slide many times today. Today, we have over 60,000 companies that use Azure AI, and more specifically, the Azure OpenAI service. All of these customers have been working to take these use cases and drive value across employee productivity, customer and partner engagement, streamlining business operations, and taking ideas to code and code to production. All of them realizing value of their investment in AI. Ontada, BMW, Dentsu, Mars, and more. But one that I am particularly excited to talk about is NBA. NBA is revolutionizing the engagement with their fans, bringing at their fingertips AI-powered insights. Let's take a look. We don't have audio.
One of the ways is deepening understanding.
Latest technology enables us to analyze player performance, game strategy, and team dynamics.
Basically, kind of ingest all the live information of what's going on in the games, also pull in a lot of historical context to provide more meaningful insights when fans are following the action on the NBA app.
It really enhances the fan experience no matter how they choose to watch the games, whether they're watching live or they've missed the game.
At the heart of NBA Insights is Microsoft Azure OpenAI service, which uses GPT models to process immense amounts of data just very quickly. So fans can now receive detailed information about their favorite players, teams, all in real time.
By harnessing Azure's computational power, Insights can offer users detailed analysis for every aspect of the game. We truly believe NBA Insights on the NBA app is the future of basketball fandom, delivering a more personalized and engaging experience.
The beauty of Insights is that, whether you're kind of watching a game live or on the go or watching with friends, Insights is always there to give you just-in-time information and give you the why behind what's happening on the court.
With the features and flexibility of the Azure OpenAI service, we're confident that the Insights feature will continue to evolve, changing how fans will consume NBA content and really make it easier to appreciate what's going on during a live game.
Isn't that awesome? How many of you are NBA fans in the room? Right? Now, to tell us more about how NBA is transforming with AI, let me welcome to the stage Charlie Rolfe. Charlie,
Thank
welcome.
you. It's hard to follow that video.
I know.
Hopefully I can deliver. So I lead the basketball stats group at the NBA. We're responsible for all the data that describes the game on the court. We do the full back-end tech stack for that data.
This is awesome. So Charlie and I were having a conversation yesterday, and he was sharing all about the information that they capture. And I continue to be impressed. Every single game, there's so much stats. There's so much records that are being broken. What did you tell us a little bit about all of the different, the vast amount of data that you're capturing per game?
You're right. Thank you for being a basketball nerd right there with me. But we have 29 body parts for every player 60 times a second throughout the whole game. So we have a computer vision system in every arena that's tracking these movements of the players and generating these millions and millions of data points for every game. And our system takes it from that computer vision step through additional steps to process that data and turn it into meaningful data points like drives and post-ups and ball screens, and then also further analyze that for interesting insights from the data that we present to fans like we show here on the example slide.
That's awesome. So what was the process that you at NBA took to get the use case and then start working on AI insights?
Sure. So Azure OpenAI really provided a need and helped us with a need in that we had great systems all the way through that tech stack until the last part about presenting it, as you see here on the screen. And we needed a way for the insights to be turned into something living and breathing that fans could interact with and get the context they need. And Azure OpenAI provided us that system where we could give it the insights that all these systems were producing, and Azure OpenAI would then turn it into something that was live and engaging and meaningful that the fan could recognize and keep up with it during the live game.
Awesome. What about like some of the challenges that your team went through as you were developing the application?
Sure. So some of the challenges I already led to, like basketball is a very specific lexicon, right? There's a certain speech patterns to it that are not standard for the rest of spoken English language, and whether it's new words like drives and post-ups and ball screens, as I alluded to, or if it's use of a word in a different way, so dimes and crashing the boards and shooting from deep. All those things have a different meaning in our world. But despite that, Azure OpenAI did a great job, and we use GPT-4o, and it's done excellently at translating and understanding those things and still providing a meaningful basketball answer to the fans who are looking for those insights.
Fantastic. Well, now tell us a little bit about the impact and how do you see AI continuing to spring the transformation at NBA?
Sure. So our team's sort of vision is we want to educate and engage fans. Like whatever we're doing with the basketball data, if we're achieving that, we're doing something right. And Azure OpenAI has really allowed us that last step, right? We've had that tech stack of finding all the insights, but it's gotten that last bit of educating and engaging the fans by presenting it to the fans, and then also allowing for follow-up questions where they can click and get more context and learn about the last time something happened, or is that insight they just saw a record, or what is the record? Those are all prompts that are coming up, and you can see them on the phone there, that a user can click into and get more information, and again, further that North Star vision of educating and engaging fans.
Thank you, Charlie. Now, I know that you're doing a session, so for those of you who want to learn more, which is the session that they should?
I appreciate it. I can plug my own session. That's great. 8:30 tomorrow morning, we'll get our whole tech stack of everything we run on Azure from a stat standpoint, and we're really excited for the future, right? Some of the things that are coming up are the excitement to use these Azure OpenAI across multimodal inputs. And we have all these exciting new things like a dunk score where we take that tracking data and we can measure how high the ball gets and whether the player took it back behind his head for a dunk. And we can measure all those things and come up with an automatic dunk score that ranks the quality of the dunks. And imagine what OpenAI and Azure OpenAI will do with that.
This is just fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlie, for joining us.
Thank you.
So now let's dive into how all of this magic happens. You've heard it today in the keynote. We announced today the Azure AI Foundry. We envision that every developer will be an AI developer, whether you have built on Python, C#, .NET, Java, Go, every developer. And every app will become an AI-powered application. Azure AI Foundry is the unified platform that brings together the models, tooling, safety, observability into a single experience. And Azure OpenAI, it's a key offer within AI Foundry. Every single AI app that we built at Microsoft is powered by Azure AI Foundry. Every single one of them is using Azure OpenAI. And I mentioned this because, Azure OpenAI service offers 99% reliability, is offered across 28 different regions to meet all of your data residency requirements, and 99% SLA. And is the engine behind all of the copilots and all of the applications that you see on Microsoft. So it's pressure tested to the scale and the set of requirements that you might have for your own applications. Now, over the last 6 months, okay, I was seen a huge spike on the usage of Azure OpenAI. And this is not including all of our internal traffic, just to be sure. It is all third-party traffic. And as we see, of course, Azure OpenAI, I just want to do a little bit of a double click on our partnership with OpenAI. We leverage the strengths of both organizations. OpenAI has the cutting-edge models, such as GPT and the O1 series, combined with Microsoft's secure, enterprise-grade, and all of the capabilities that the Azure platform has to offer. With a proven history in AI services, including speech, language, and vision. Now, this collaboration enables us to bring scale AI solutions with confidence, meeting the needs of customers that demand both the innovation and the governance. And I want to invite Steve to stage, because we're going to talk a little bit about what are the key differentiators on the Azure OpenAI service. First, as a team, we are committed to make sure that every single time you have the latest OpenAI developments, the latest models at the same time, the same day that OpenAI launches on their services. But our commitment, yes, an applause for that. But our commitment goes beyond that. So, I mentioned you have 99.9% uptime, 28 different regions, right? And we also have the data zones. Steve, why don't you tell us about data zones?
Yeah, it's just been amazing to see what you all have been doing with this amazing service. And I want to call out just some of the amazing use cases that we've seen based on these promises that we owe to you. With flexible offerings, we've got companies like Leia, who are a startup out of Europe that are offering legal services within their European Union, and they're relying on data zones to ensure that their data remains resident within the EU, which has been amazing. And what about privacy and security? PwC today runs audit services using Azure OpenAI, built on top of and integrated with SAP, to actually run auditing of their customers' risk workloads while ensuring that their client data is always private, always secure, and remains safe with our responsible AI promises. And what about Enterprise Azure? As you all know, Black Friday's coming up next week, and in the US, that's a huge shopping experience. Well, Walmart is relying on Azure's scale and Azure's reliability for their shopping generative AI assistant, which is built on Azure OpenAI. And they're guaranteeing that all of that traffic that you're going to send as you do your Black Friday shopping is actually going to scale with the platform. And what about developers? Companies like CarMax are revolutionizing the way that people buy vehicles every day. And they're relying on our integrated development tools and stack to be able to change the way that people compare vehicles online all the time. And it doesn't end there, because we now have integration with over 1,800 models through our catalog.
Yes. So not just OpenAI models.
It's not just OpenAI models. And so that's our commitment and our promise to you. Yes, you get same-day access to the latest innovation from OpenAI. And you get these commitments as well. And we're excited to get into that with you today.
Thank you. I want to spend a little bit more time on privacy.
Yeah.
I think this is a very important area for us to emphasize. When it comes to using the Azure OpenAI service, your data is your data. There is not training on that data unless you're doing fine-tuning and distilling OpenAI models for your own use case. There is no additional training that we do on that data, or the prompts, or the completions, or the embeddings. Like, your data is completely secure and private. None of the inputs or outputs are shared with other customers or with OpenAI. And we don't use any of that data to improve our service. So you can remain confident that all of the data that you bring to the service remain exclusively yours, ensuring the highest level of confidentiality and control. Now, remember that I mentioned that we're going to do the 3 chapters. Okay, that was the intro. Now we're going to go into the specific chapters. We're going to have a whole bunch of demos for you, and we're going to start with going through innovation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yina.
Yep.
Let's give Yina a round of applause. So I'm excited to unpack some of the latest innovations that we've been working on and have been releasing and making available to you on the Azure OpenAI service. And so we're going to talk about some of the latest series of models, but instead of just talking about it, we actually want to get into the details and show you the capabilities of these models. And so Nick Brady, come and join me. Nick is a colleague and a good friend. Come up here, Nick. Join me as we're going to actually walk through and show you, why would you choose GPT-4o for a specific task or scenario? Why would you choose to use structured outputs, APIs? Why would you choose the new deep thinking, reasoning, O1 models? Why would you use real-time audio? So with all of these choices, Nick, where do people start as they think about these different capabilities?
Great question, Steve. Thanks for the alley-oop. It's a callback to the NBA. Well How's everyone doing? I see we're piling in here over the door. I get to work with dozens and dozens of organizations per year on checking out these latest models and understanding how can we use them. And so O1 is this new latest model that provides advanced reasoning. And it's hard to know when you're going to use what. And so Steve and I often talk about how The GPT series of models provides fast thinking, right? Things where you need to get something done pretty quickly, doesn't require a whole lot of thought. But the slow thinking means that I need more deliberate reasoning and I need to spend time doing that. And so as I was coming to Chicago, I was reminded, I've not been here in 10 years. What a crime that I haven't been back. It's such a great city. So what if I just asked a question like that? Today is November 19th, 2024. It's the first day of Microsoft Ignite. Help me plan what I can do in Chicago after the event through the week. I love pizza, rock and roll, and I enjoy a good cocktail. Careful, Nick. All right, so let's ask the models this question. And you can see GPT-4o is instant. It's fast. It even plans an itinerary for me on what I could do, right? I could see, sounds fantastic, a week in Chicago. Meanwhile, on the right, and that took 6 seconds. On the right, we'll see it here in a few seconds. It gives me a lot more tips here, like an entire thesis of a planned itinerary to do to indulge in Chicago's famous pizza.
So Nick, tell me, it definitely took longer, but is that just because it's slower? What was going on behind the scenes while we were waiting for that response?
Yeah, so the difference in how these models are trained, right? With GPT-4o, we typically evaluate the outcome of these models. And sometimes it's like driving a car without reverse, where if it samples a token and it goes down a path it didn't intend to, it doesn't know how to stop and just continues. What O1 does is it does process evaluation and understands, I need to carve out a plan of what they asked me specifically, and then I'll work against that plan until I feel like I've reached completion. And that's a completely different way in how these models are trained.
Yeah, and you can actually see that in the output, right? Its
right.
thinking is actually a lot more structured, it's actually a lot more thoughtful, and it's a lot more planned.
For 18 seconds, I think it was worth the wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been amazing to see companies like Harvey AI, as an example, that are using the same capability to actually compare legal documents and case notes, which requires a lot more nuance, perhaps, than your planned trip to Chicago, where you are today, but you can see how that power applies.
Yeah. You also could see how it helped me go to Buddy Guy's Legends to listen to some blues rock and roll when I flew in the other night.
I love that. Love that. What have you got next?
So right now I'm asking for a market analysis, right? Our healthcare company, Lamna, we're considering expanding to Chicago versus other North American cities. We want to include a couple of things like competitor presence here in the city, demographics, regulatory environment, and talent availability, right? And so here's a little bit about our company profile, which the model may not have known because it's a Microsoft fictitious company. And so you can see it does this entire market analysis. Here we get sort of like a numbered list of things, but we see Chicago, established competitors here in the market, the saturation, other cities to consider, customer demographics in Chicago and the institutions that are here. I mean, quite a thesis for understanding where we need to go next as a up-and-coming company.
So what you're telling me is that the O1 models not only are more structured in their thinking, they do deeper analysis. Rather than a quick summary, they're actually diving into the data and really unpacking it for you.
And not only that, they provide rationale for why they came up with the results. So
Fascinating.
It's not like you have to prompt the models like you do with GPT to think about it step by step. It always thinks step by step.
Amazing. And what else have you got to show us?
I got one more.
Okay.
And I may not have any live code to show you, but this might be a nice seed to take you over to the Azure AI Expert Meetup booths, because I'm going to go build this application that O1 suggests me. And so basically, another Microsoft fictitious company, Fourth Coffee in Seattle, we want to create a website here, and we want features like user authentication and online menu, ordering systems, and a loyalty program. And I'm getting, the great boilerplate code that I need over here from GPT-4o.
Okay.
And you'll see here in just a few seconds how we've planned this out entirely from at the very beginning, from a setup in the project directory to initialize the back end and front end. And so these models on the left provide really good code completion and sometimes can do the hello world of these applications, but advanced reasoning models can write full stack applications from scratch.
Wow, so these really are becoming their own agentic systems in a way. They're able to plan, they're able to reason, and then they're able to actually structure a task that you could then go off and execute to build that application with all of that coding already written in line. All of the documentation is there for you.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I can't wait to go build this now. Come see it over at the booth maybe tomorrow.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Nick, for those amazing demos of these new models. We do have deep dive sessions just on O1 specifically on Thursday or Wednesday, I forget when, sometime this week as well. Look out for that. Nick is going to be at the booth, and he's going to stay here because he's got a few more things for us to show. And so you just saw the difference between the speed and the capability of the GPT-4o models, which can really quickly respond and do a great job at completing tasks like summarization, question and answering, and even generating text and content for you. And then you saw the deep reasoning capabilities of the O1 models that can think, that can plan, and that can actually be their own agentic systems. And of course, those O1 models are in preview today, and we're looking forward to the GA where more of that availability is going to be coming up. And then Nick was also showing some structured outputs. And do you have something to show there, Nick?
We should probably show them, right?
Should we show them structured
Yeah.
output? So what if you've got an application where you actually need to generate the format in a very specific, constrained way? If you've been trying to use these generative models, one of the things that you'll see that they're actually struggling at is to be able to output in a form that you need. So how would you do that, Nick?
Yeah, so come over to my screen.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of enterprises, regulated industry, Walmart, the one that we named before, and then also some horizontal scenarios like customer call center, right? Everybody has customers, and so we have to be able to deal and reconcile with those sorts of things. And so, like working with financial institutions, we have financial data, right? So if I just had some analyst notes here for market performance, I want to be able to generate a risk assessment report. And basically what I did is I defined a pedantic model of defining the structure of what I wanted output of name, risk factors, recommendations. And I want this for every single unstructured financial document I have.
So it's not making up the structure you see on the right side. You've actually given it a template, a JSON schema to say, hey, fill out the content in this form, and it's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, it strongly types to make sure that it's a string or a float or an integer, so I always get the same thing every time, and I can build really resilient applications that way.
That's amazing. What else have you got?
Let's see, we did healthcare before, so let's do retail next,
Yeah.
right? So right now I just have some forecasting data, right? So we see a couple of products like noise canceling headphones and a smart fitness watch, and I just have some things, and this could have been probably copied and pasted, right? But we need to generate an inventory forecast for this before my deadline comes up to report to my boss, right? And so here I just have the forecasted date, the product ID for each of these, and the current trends showing that steady growth. And it gives me my recommended order quantity based upon those factors.
Right. So this could be the type of system you could easily pass to a downstream system now.
Yeah.
You've got the layout in a way that another system can consume that and take an action on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably want to take this to a forecasting machine learning algorithm.
Yeah.
I don't really need a GPT model to do the forecasting for me, right?
Fantastic. Well, what if I wanted to do something more analytical, like analyze a bunch of calls?
Yeah, so this one is quite cool, and I'll actually show you some baseline code here. So I have a typical web VTT file. For any of you that deal with this type of data, right? I have time codes and the agents and customers working with each other, right? And I want to be able to generate a call summary. And so far, we've actually just been looking at plain text. And you'll see behind the scenes here that I've just defined this JSON schema that gets passed to the model before it produces this result. So I can just as easily look at this, and I've got issues and category of internet service outage. Internet has been down since yesterday. I even have my sentiment of both frustrated and empathetic, which is important for quality assurance. And look, people are already doing this today, but these models provide 100% adherence to JSON schema, which means that you don't have to filter out plain text when the model on the left ends up saying, like, here's the JSON. And I don't really want that. I just want the JSON. So just give me that every time.
Right. So then if you're going to do this analysis, it's going to come out in an output that, for example, I could go and chart or graph or something like that. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's exactly right.
Awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. And we will come back to you again. So that's the structured output API, which is available today with the GPT-4o, 0806 model, and 4o and 4o mini, and it's also coming to older models soon. Now, one of the things we didn't talk about is the new audio APIs. And I'm excited to announce that in preview, starting in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the new GPT-4o real-time audio chat completions. So this is actually similar to the audio engines that you've been seeing demonstrated by Seth and others, and you'll see coming up, but for use when you're actually processing a bulk set of files. So you might have a bunch of those call center files, but they actually haven't been transcribed yet. Right. And you want to do analysis on purely the audio tokens itself. You can now do that with this chat completions file. But let's also look at audio real time. So you've seen some amazing retail demos from Seth and others. One of our customers out of Australia, Lyrebird, are working in the healthcare space. And this is a real example of what they are building with audio real time. So let me roll this video of Lyrebird's real-time application.
Hey Merrick, can you help? I can't read it.
It's a message from Dr. Osborne about your appointment today. You have to fill a questionnaire.
I'm not a fan of questionnaire.
I know, but I see they have audio questionnaire available.
Great.
Hi, Elaine. Your doctor has a few questions for you about your consultation today. Don't worry, this won't take long. First, can you tell me the reason for seeing Dr. Osborne?
I got a pain on my side.
I'm sorry to hear that. Could you tell me exactly where the pain in your side is occurring? And if it's also in other areas?
It's on my left-hand side.
Okay, and how would you describe the pain?
怎么说抽筋？
明白了。这种痉挛疼痛是从什么时候开始的？
大约1周以前。
明白了。有没有什么情况会加剧疼痛？比如吃饭、运动或者躺下的时候？
It's worse after eating.
Thanks, Eileen. Are there any other issues you'd like to speak to Dr. Osborne about today?
No, that will be everything. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eileen. I'm sending these notes to Dr. Osborne, and they will see you at 2 p.m.
Isn't that awesome? Let's give that team a round of applause. You know, it's just such a good, real application of this technology which can truly revolutionize customer service experiences and change the way that you're doing business with your customers every day. I'm excited to see this continuing to grow and develop and integrate with the rest of the stack. One more feature that I want to announce today, which is in preview and is going to be in GA in a couple weeks, is predictive outputs. So this is really useful for scenarios like the code generation scenario that you showed earlier, Nick. So in that code generation scenario, it may be that the model generates a chunk of code, but you realize that you need to change just a couple of lines. And so before this feature, what you would do, or even with this feature, you would go in and you would reprompt it and say, hey, that previous prompt looks great, but can you change this one section? Can you just change these few lines? And what the model is going to do behind the scenes is regenerate all of that code, including the changes that you asked for, which means it's going to take just as much time the second time as the first time. Well, predictive outputs accelerates that, because what predictive outputs is doing is it's recognizing that you are following up your previous prompt, so it can predict that all of the code that you haven't commented on is fine, and it will just predict that response back to you. Teams like GitHub Copilot are seeing a 10x speed improvement using predictive outputs on code generation scenarios, which is massive, which is absolutely huge, so I'm excited for that one. So we've been telling you about so many new models and capabilities, but the innovation and the changes and the advancements don't stop there. We're also excited this week to be announcing a bunch of new customization features. And we have some deep dives actually tomorrow and over the next couple days into these features, but I want to show you what's coming, or more specifically, I'm going to have Nick show you what's coming. And so there's 3 key features that we're announcing this week. One is distillation. You see, one of the biggest challenges to fine-tuning a model that I hear all the time, and I face all the time, is the ability to get a good data set. You have to go and hire a lot of people to be able to go through logs of chats, to be able to mark up those logs and label just the good ones that you want to train on, to be able to generate a training data set that's separate to your evaluation data set. Well, that has now become a lot easier with stored completions, evals, and fine-tuning, and Masa has a deep dive demo on that coming later. A second scenario is vision fine-tuning. And this is actually one, Nick, that I use all the time. Because every day I'm living and breathing, looking at the data of the service that you're all using. And I'm wanting to understand, like, what's causing growth in this area? What's causing slowdowns in this area? Which model is taking off? And so I'm looking at a lot of complicated Power BI charts. And that's great. I'm pretty good at interpreting those. But then I need to generate a report for my leadership team. And so I have to go and manually scrape all that data, and I have to turn it into text. So I wonder if there's a better way, Nick, for me to do that task.
Yeah, there just might be. We're doing all those tasks manually all the time. And, by the way, just forewarning, I just built this demo last night, so we'll see if it ends up working. But trust the demo gods are with us, right? I just took a ton of data from a chart QA data set. This comes from Hugging Face. And in particular, because we are looking at charts and trying to make sense of them and then help our executives understand what the charts actually mean, we wanted to sort of tone down the amount of language that the GPT models uses and being overly descriptive. We just need the cliff notes, right? And so we use this fine-tuning data set to train a GPT-4o model, and this is a 2024 0806 model. And so let's just see what it can do with this particular slide. I did just build this demo last night, so let's try to rerun it here real quickly.
Awesome. So what you were just showing us is the training data set, which you got from Hugging Face, which is a training data set of a whole bunch of different charts. And that data set has been used to fine-tune this model, which may or may not work for us here. Let's give it one more go.
Let me look at, I think I know what it is. Let's just check the deployment here.
This is live coding. You didn't know you were coming to an L400 session, did you? Did you guys sign up for that? I hope you all did. All right, Nick.
All right. We're going to try it one more time. Let's restart the kernel and give it a run.
Everyone's waiting very patiently.
Come on, baby. You worked for me last night. If this doesn't work and we have time later, I'll show it at the end as the...
Okay, why don't we do that, Nick? I'm going to let you, we'll give it one more go. Otherwise, I'll let you sit here and live debug your code.
All right.
Okay.
Debugging it is.
We're going to debug.
All right.
We'll come back to Nick. We'll see how the cake is cooking. Thank you all for giving us a round of applause for failing a demo. That's pretty awesome. I have to thank you for that. You're so gracious. We are doing a vision fine-tuning demo tomorrow as well in our fine-tuning deep dive session. I'll have Ami and Nick working on that one too. We're super pleased to also be announcing a set of partnerships this week with Weights and Biases, where we're creating a deep integration into the Azure OpenAI platform that allows you to not only do evaluation on our platform, but also if you're an existing Weights and Biases customer, you can now take all of that evaluation data and the training data and run evaluations on the Weights and Biases platform as well. And we've also announced amazing partnerships with Gredle, with Scale, and with StatSig, who are helping with data generation, synthesis, and experimentation processes to really enable you to get to the next level with customizing these models. And it doesn't just end there. We've got some amazing sessions this week on the new Azure AI agent services. So Assistance has already been setting the pattern in the industry for the way to build processes and workflows that bring together multiple tools into one agentic system. But there were limitations within the OpenAI Assistant stack. And so that's where the Azure AI agents comes into play. You can now use these agents to not only call against Azure OpenAI models, but also call against models like Mistral, Cohere, and Llama as well. You can also integrate and bring your own data to these models with connectivity to sources like Bing, SharePoint, and Fabric. So you don't have to always upload your data into the system. You can connect to your data where it is. And we've got a bunch of automation built around that with integration with logic apps and functions. And of course, security is paramount to all of our customers. And the ability for the assistants to actually use managed identity and Entra identity as part of Azure is a core part of this agent stack too. So come and check out the assistant session, which is coming up as well. And so I'm going to talk about what we're doing to help you scale and what we're doing to enable flexibility as you're growing your workloads. As Ina showed early on in the session, the growth rate is really accelerating. We're seeing a lot of that is because your usage is really accelerating too. And so we're recognizing that many of you are facing the challenge of taking an application which you've been developing, which you've been piloting in proof of concept with a few users, and now you want to be able to scale that application. And so one of our promises to you is that we want to create as many flexible offering shapes as possible to enable you to scale with your workloads. And so now we have 3 core ways that you can interact with our service, 3 deployment types. You've got standard. And in standard, you simply pay for what you use. You pay for each token. And with that, it's the most simple on and off switch that you can get. And standard is available to massive scale on our global SKU as well. So it's not a limitation in terms of scale, but it does allow you to use it whenever you want or whenever you need. And then we've got provisioned. And Chris is doing a great demo after this, actually in the theater session. And we've got an amazing session tomorrow that'll drill into the details of this. But with provisioned, if you have a sustained high throughput application, you're actually getting to production load. You can save a lot of money. You can gain a lot of value with the provisioned offering. Or simply, if you want to use the provisioned offering to ensure that during your peak period, you will always have capacity, the provisioned offering gives you that peace of mind. And then we've got batch. Batch is for jobs that you can run anytime. Maybe you want to label a bunch of files. Maybe you want to generate a bunch of data. You can use batch, which is available at 50% off the standard token rate, but it will run sometime within a 24-hour window. Now, across all of those offerings, we also have 3 locations that you can choose from to deploy your model. You can deploy in any one of the 28 different regions that we have around the world. And your data will remain in that region both at rest and when processing. It never leaves that individual region. At the other extreme, you can choose our global service. Now, with our global service, you still choose the region in which where data is stored. That's your choice. You can actually say, my data will be stored, let's say, in East US. And it will never leave that region for storage, but it will be processed somewhere in the world, wherever the capacity is available. And now we've got data zones that we just announced. We have 2 data zones, one for the US and one for the European Union member nations. And with these data zones, the data will never leave that geographic boundary. So it will be processed across the US or across the European Union member state nations, but it will never leave those data boundaries. And so that gives you the balance of being able to have multiple distributed systems working in your favor while giving you data residency within a geography. And we've got data zones today in standard, and data zones for provisioned is coming in the first week of December. So we're excited to see those come as well. I'm actually really excited about these data zones because it simplifies your access to the models, the availability of the models, and the throughput that you need. And I'm also really excited about batch, which I just talked about as well. Like I said, this is an amazing service that actually allows you to scale with your workloads when you need your workloads. Now I'm going to just pause and check in, Nick. How are you going with that demo?
You know, it was a case of there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Okay.
I got it fixed. We're ready.
You ready?
And I fixed a typo.
Oh, there's a typo in there too. Who wants to see the demo of Vision Fine-Tuning?
Come on. All right. We're all set. So we were saying, right, Steve, that we need to be able to explain these charts to our executives, right? And we sort of set this up by saying that the 806 model is great at being able to explain the chart, but it's like way too much detail.
Yeah, I couldn't send that to my executives. That's more than 1 paragraph. I mean, honestly, I don't have that much time to read either. So.
Can you do a summary of a summary, please?
Yeah.
And so, look, we got this chart title token growth rate over time. The axis represents the months. And so we got a pretty good enough sort of estimate there. But let's let's actually create an executive-friendly response on how our business is growing, because we want to see our customers along with the token consumption growth, right?
Okay, that'll be really interesting.
And so here, we see we've got Azure OpenAI businesses showing strong growth with a steady increase in both customer acquisition and token usage.
Wow.
This is exactly like the clip that you need, right?
That's exactly what I need for my monthly report for Scott Guthrie. That's
All right.
fantastic.
Let's try one more here. For all that growth, which model was actually the most significant factor for that increase?
So those two charts are pretty easy. So what you improved there was the summary. This chart is an eye chart. Like, I have a hard time reading this chart in Power BI. So hold on a second. It just gave me the answer right away. GPT-4o is the fastest growing model. Now, a little bit of improvement there because we don't quite have a model called 4o32K.
Got to get back to fine-tuning some more.
So this is where the fine-tuning loop happens. But that's been amazing to see that progress of fine-tuning. So this is one of my favorite use cases of fine-tuning, is the ability to help a model read charts accurately.
Thanks for hanging in with me. Can I get a Ric Flair woo? All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Let's give Nick a round of applause. Amazing. So I know we downloaded a lot of information to you all. We talked about the amazing innovations that we're seeing with breakthroughs and model releases that are coming from OpenAI and are available on the same day on the Azure OpenAI service so that you get access to those models with all of our Azure promises as well. We talked about the advancements in customization, the way that you can use distillation to be able to capture data from a larger model and train a smaller model, and the way that you can now fine-tune with images, such as charts, so that it does a better job with your specific data and can deliver reports to your executives like I'm going to be using this one for mine. And we talked about how we're providing scale and flexibility that allows you to meet your enterprise requirements of security while also being able to scale your workload in the way that fits your business the best. And the great news is, for every one of these things, we have deep dive sessions later today and tomorrow going into more details. So if you want to unpack how does this actually work and understand in more details, please feel free to come up to these sessions that are coming as well. So we're going to invite the rest of the folks to come up here on stage with me for questions. But before we do, in order to get started, all of these Azure OpenAI services are a part of the new Azure AI Foundry that we announced earlier today. So the best place to get started is aka.ms MSFT AOAI, where you can get access to all of these models and the features that you've seen. And you can start playing with all of the features that we announced today that are available, and some of them that we talked about that are coming in just a couple of weeks. We're getting you out of here with just a couple minutes to spare, so thank you very much, everyone.
That was packed. 2 minutes for questions. Thank you, Steve. Who's going to be the brave one? Who's going to ask a question?
Do we have questions out there in the room? Can we bring up the house lights?
Just can't see.
So I can see, because I can't see at the back. Someone with light control.
There's a question over there.
There is a question.
There's a microphone here on the
Go ahead.
hallway.
It's making his way across. Once again, if we can bring up the house lights, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, awesome presentation firstly, and just curious about the standard deployment set of things. From a security and a compliance perspective, will there be any concerns or a visibility kind of thing that we just need to raise it with the customer, saying, if I'm going to use a standard deployment, maybe the instance will be shared between different tenancies, or does it still stay in the same single tenancy? Is there a difference between that case?
That's a fantastic question, and thank you so much for that question, because it's one that comes up often from our customers as well. So across all of our deployment types, it's important to know that your data is always isolated and secured. Yes, we are sharing back-end systems, but those systems are never exposed to customers directly. They're secured through an API layer, which ensures that each customer's data is completely isolated and remains within their control. And again, remember, the Azure OpenAI service is generally a stateless service. We're never storing data in that service, except for with 3 exceptions. Right? One exception, and this is across standard or provisioned and batch. So one exception is batch. During the batch, you upload your files to the service, and so those files are stored, but they're stored within only your isolated control. Nobody has access to those files, and that's true across deployment types. The second is fine-tuning. If you're uploading files for fine-tuning, once again, whether it's provisioned or standard, the data is isolated, it remains secured. And then the third is content moderation with abuse monitoring turned on. And if you have that turned on, the data's stored. But again, across all offerings and all those storage types, it's always isolated just for you and your tenant.
And just to add to that, on standard, you still have the capability to choose across the 28 regions that we offer. Where do you want to have that data residency?
That's great, too.
Yeah.
Thank you for the great question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, folks, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Oh, you got one more question? Go on.
I do have a question here.
Yeah.
So for the GitHub Copilot, sometime when you give a prompt and they give you a draft for the code you wanted, however, many times you won't be able to get it exactly correct. You have to modify. The experience for you to modify here is not easy. You need tons of experience there to be able to modify those few lines code. Even the length code is only a few lines there. So my question here to you is, given the current status of the GitHub Copilot, what do you think, and in what time in your predictions we will be able to get the code run successfully for the first run? And then the experience required is almost very, very low, and for people, any people can use to do the coding there.
That's a great question, and for those that don't know, GitHub Copilot is built on Azure OpenAI, and so underneath it are all the models that are powering those experiences. And all I can say is, with each new release, even with things like predictive outputs that I talked about today, those models are getting better. And so I would say today I look at those models as my programming assistant, right? They're not yet there to fully take over a developer's role, but they are there to work alongside developers, and that's really our vision long term anyway. But certainly the complexity of tasks that they can take on with models like O1, particularly when those come to GA, I think we're going to see a significant leap in what those models can do. Thank you. And if there's other questions, please feel free to come up to the front.
Thank you.